Hi, everybody.
I liked it.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the horror show.
I really liked it.
He really liked it, I guess.
Hey. Welcome to the horror show. I'm Marcia Parker.
I'm Andrew Mercer.
I'm Jaime Fuego.
I'm Cecil Laird, and I liked the movie that we got to see tonight. Marcia, what was it?
We got to see the Blair Witch.
Well, technically, Blair Witch.
Oh,
yeah,
not
just
the...
technically Blair
Yes,
Witch.
there's no the ahead
Just
of it.
Blair Witch, not the Blair Witch
2016.
Project.
Yeah.
Not Blair Witch, Book of Shadows, Blair Witch.
Yes.
Hashtag Blair Witch.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, this review is going to be coming out well in advance of the actual release of the film,
And
over
who do we have
2
to
weeks.
thank for that, Sir
We
Cecil?
have the International Horror and Sci-Fi Film Festival to thank for it. So, thank you guys very much for connecting us with this screening because we are extremely appreciative, or at least I am.
Yes.
I'm anxious to hear what everyone else thinks about it. We refrained from speaking about it between the theater and here. So I don't know exactly what everyone thought, but as usual, we'll talk about what we thought of the story, and then we'll go into the other more minute aspects of the film, the acting, the cinematography, which we definitely need to hit for this one, as well as the effects and everything like that. So, what did everyone think?
Yay!
Pretty good.
It was pretty good.
Okay. All right. So we got some contrast going on. We got some contrast going on. Marcia, let's start with you. What did you like about it?
They really touched a lot of questions we had about the original. We actually watched the original before we went to the movie, just so we could get a refresh.
Which I'm happy we did, honestly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gave some context that was pretty necessary.
As little as I thought there was to that first movie, I actually am glad I watched it because there was more that they brought to this one from that than I thought there was.
As much as I disliked it, the original movie, they built the mythos so well. I know, Marcia loves it, which is why I'm like staring her down right now. They built very interesting mythology in that first film, and this like cranked it up to 11, man.
Well, to be fair, watching the first one 20 years later, over 20 years, over 20 years
it's like,
later.
Yeah, it's over 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's supposed to be, but wasn't it released in like 90?
Was it 97? It might
like
be.
That?
It's very close to, if not 20.
Anyway, it's
says
been about
94.
whatever.
19 years, Fuego.
Whatever.
Jeez.
Anyways,
2014
it's really unfair
90.
kind of advantage you have because when you're watching this found footage movie, one of the breakthrough movies for the genre, but they didn't really have a lot to play with. They didn't have a lot of money. It was a $10,000 film, so it's kind of hard 20 years later to sit there and pass too much judgment about it. But I really, really dug the first one because I watched it back way then, and this one I think they did a really great job. They answered a lot of the questions I was trying to get to. We had where after we watched the first one, we're like, okay, so why is this about the witch? Who is actually stalking them? What's the method? What really is happening?
Was she possessing people or just enticing them, or what was really going on? Because I had kind of forgotten about the aspect of the old man who was like, killing the children and all of that. All that I remembered was that there was a witch involved, and that's pretty much the extent of it.
So I thought they did a really great job hitting on those points. And with the storyline, because we didn't really talk about it, we learned, actually you kind of learned in the trailers, it's about her younger brother who he actually gets some information that leads him back to him and his friends out to the woods to try to investigate, to try to see if he can find out what happened to his sister and possibly find evidence that she may still exist. So.
Which was one of my biggest complaints about the movie, was the fact that he's like, she could still be out there! And the whole time I was just like, there's no way 20 years later your sister is still living out there in the woods or whatever. And I mean, I don't know. The best thing that they did with the story, in my opinion, was expanded on the mythology, like I was mentioning. The time, just the aspect of time not being in real terms, was one of the best expansions. The fact that these woods are weird. The fact that people are waking up at 7 a.m. and there's supposed to be sunlight out and there's no sunlight. It's still dark. What is going on? I mean, that's not super spoilerific, I guess, but that was one of the best things about just the strangeness of this place that I felt that they developed very, very well in the story.
I really liked the movie, kind of just looking at it with no aspirations. I didn't want this movie to be as big as it was back then. I wasn't looking for what turned out to be like a genre-inspiring movie. It was just another movie.
Yeah, because unlike us, you had not watched it before.
No,
so there's the interesting perspective, guys.
I hadn't seen the first one, watched it, most of it with you guys before we went to the movie. Went to the movie with that perspective. I was entertained for most of the movie, a new one. Like you said, the story was more, they developed the story more, it made a little more sense. The one thing you connected on that you told us about, I think, was one of the, I didn't even realize it walking out, and once you did that, it was kind of like, they're a little sneakier than they were when the first one, and like I said, they had a lot to build on. For me, though, the whole first person, even though they kind of upped it, it was almost like instead of the cameras being all blurry, they were all in HD. They're just running around and the hearing voices running in whatever direction.
It was at least creative the way that they, employed all the different types of cameras. I thought that was cool.
And we'll get to that. But here's something you guys need to know. If you are not a fan of the found footage genre and the way it's shot and presented, this isn't going to change your mind.
No.
Not by any stretch. Now, it was executed in a much more professional and, frankly, tolerable way than the first one was.
Sophisticated and mature.
More sophisticated, more mature. Obviously, the director has grown, the whole crew. I mean, they have the money behind them now, so they could do it the way they needed to. That being said, for those of us that like found footage movies, this is one of the better ones. In my opinion.
Yeah, you'll totally dig it. And I like how they solved a lot of the problems they had with the first one by having the different type of equipment. Like the equipment, they had cameras that attached to their ears.
Yeah.
So like you
Very
had the
convenient.
they have the one on the POV shots that's not shaky cam.
Well, and it's actually a really sort of brilliant thing when you think about it filmmaking wise, because not only does it give you a constant straight, almost eyeline POV, but it also frees your actors' hands up, both of them.
Right.
So they can do stuff, and you can see both of their hands. One of them you don't have to assume is always like this.
Right.
So it was actually a really interesting thing, and frankly, when two characters are having one-on-ones, it's exactly like an over-the-shoulder shot in a normal movie. You just take out the shoulder because it's right there over their shoulder, literally.
And it's easier for the characters to forget they even have them on. So that it
Absolutely.
wouldn't be more, you wouldn't get this whole like, why are you still filming?
They're
type
essentially
thing.
Bluetooth-sized cameras.
Yeah.
They're
right on the ear.
Right there, and it shoots right out, and it's a great mechanism. One of the things I was most impressed with this movie was the new additions that sort of just enhanced the storytelling.
Right.
And I do want to get to the cinematography eventually because it's huge and there's a couple things to touch on specifically, but let's just stick with the story just for a little bit more. I thought there was more breadth to this than the last one, because not only is it the three characters you see or the four characters, right, that you see in the trailer, but they actually meet a couple more. So the addition of a couple of bodies lets them play with what happens to these people as they start disappearing, as you must assume is going to happen.
Right.
It's almost like a cannon fodder mechanism where you're like, man, with more people
Yes
in the horror
and no,
movie.
that's the thing. I thought, yes, these people are cannon fodder, but they actually ended up playing more pivotal roles in the story, and they helped to further the lore after a fashion. So I really appreciated that aspect of the characters. There was no one that was really just kind of, they didn't make a difference. Everyone that was in it, all six people, had a role to play, which is great. And so everyone had an arc.
Including
awesome.
the two new people who showed up a little bit later in it. I was actually very impressed with their dynamic. The fact that, not to get too revealing or anything, they were obsessed with the myth. Which I thought was really cool.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like at first when they were introduced, we're kind of like, okay, I don't know, but they were really great actors in this movie.
They're the Randys from Scream. Like they're really into the lore. They want to go and join the group and figure out what's going on, but there's more to them than we sort of know at first, and it all comes to bear. Like, that's what I liked about it. The first one was so, like, just sparse in storytelling and storylines. And it was shot that way. If I recall correctly, the directors and producers would leave notes on trees giving rough ideas. Okay, you guys are getting angry at each other. And the actors just had to play off that. So you have to respect that. This obviously had a script, but they did a great job with it. So the story was, I think, way more successful. And the bits of the lore that we got, I thought, were very interesting.
Yeah.
I never got really bored in this.
And it's funny because, like, I kind of see it both ways. Like, I like the first one because it felt more real to me, because I know, but no, it felt more real. Like, because if you're lost in the woods, you get frustrated. Nobody knows where they're going, and you guys are playing off each other.
This did feel more like a stylized Hollywood film.
Right. The first one felt a little bit more real.
Very raw.
what you would be doing and if that was your situation. This new one, which I really like too, is just a completely different style where you didn't have those moments really where people were actually freaking out with each other. Yeah, there was like one moment, but there's no breathing. It was just once it started going, it was going, and I was like, I kind of want that little bit of a break in between so I can like gather myself and come back to my center.
They reined in some of the things that were a little over the top in the first one too. The constant screaming for each other once they started disappearing.
There was a little bit of the movie.
There was a little bit of that in this, but I was trying to pay attention to it specifically, and they never had anyone scream a name more than twice in a row. And so they were trying to rein it in, I believe, because they again, what I went into this movie hoping was that they learned from the mistakes of the first movie, and I feel like they did, because I think the next thing we should get into, because it dovetails from the story, is, was this scary? Because I think a lot of people are gonna be curious about that, and to me, I think it was way scarier than either of the first two movies.
Well, agreed there, but scary in general.
No, I mean there was a number of jump scares. No, not scary overall. I mean, it's not like you're nervous the whole time, but the scares that are there were really good, and they added something, a ominous, heavy presence that really lent itself to, making me believe that why the characters were scared, because if something's lumbering around outside knocking over trees kind of is what the sounds were, and we got a bit of an explanation to it later on, I was scared. I was like, that would unnerve the hell out of me, way more so than what we got in the first one, which was off in the distant, stuff, trees, branches snapping and stuff.
I'll tell you what, okay? We've lived in the city for a very long time, and I remember one instance when I went back to Maine and my friend outside her house, the only light you had was her porch light. Everything else is pitch black. And I'll tell you this, you start to hear noises and you can't see what's out there, you're gonna freak the out.
Gears start turning in your head, right?
And you really gotta put yourself in the place. You're in the middle of the woods where you're already like creeped out because of the legend and the lore, and then all of a sudden you're hearing noises and with you. Sorry, my language again.
I was gonna say, Susie wants slaughter here.
But it's gonna freak you out, and it really got me. Like Cecil was kind of laughing at me.
She was jumping a number of times.
I think I hurt myself
at one point
because I was sitting like this, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And I'm like, "Oh, I hurt myself."
Great.
I was seated next to Mercer, so I didn't get into that.
I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's so crazy!" It got me going.
I think she was this close to grabbing onto my arm like I was her husband, because it felt like I could feel that, like she was really getting scared, and I was too, but she was just getting it a little bit more than me. But I loved they did something. They made a choice towards the end, and I think this is worth possibly doing a separate spoilers discussion. So we'll get to it. But they made a choice that unnerved me at the end, because the choice they made is something that always unnerves me when I see it. And it's not like I've seen it a lot. I've seen it once or twice before, and I'll pinpoint that in the spoiler section.
Is this the crawling or?
No. Why don't I just give it away? No, I'm just kidding. So I'll pinpoint that in the spoiler section, but they made a lot of good choices in this film. They really did. But let's move on. Let's hit the acting real quick.
Okay.
Now, it was a young cast, right? Mid-20s all around, pretty much. But I must say, they were all convincing in their roles. There was no one that stood out as like, oh, God, one of these stereotypes.
Right.
They were good. No one stood out as bad. And to me, that's fine. That's great
there
in a
was
horror,
nobody
in a found footage.
being overly obnoxious.
Right.
Or
I don't
bossy.
know. There was maybe one character who was a little bit, but he was playing that stereotypical role of just, talking smack and...
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't feel that way about him. I thought he played his role really well. But I thought everybody, given the first one where the characters got a little really obnoxious and kind of like redundant at times, and I love the first one, but the actors just could have played it a little bit better. But this one, I felt comfortable, like cared about them with no reason. Like, I had no reason to care about them, but I did.
I was invested.
Yeah, and I thought that's really great. That's great acting.
That speaks to acting as well as story.
Right, because if you don't care about the characters, then it takes away from the enjoyment of the film. So.
You just weren't as blown away, Andrew and Fuego?
I mean, hey, it's characters that I haven't seen in any previous movies, so they were kind of faceless in a similar fashion that the original Blair Witch Project. You know, it was people you hadn't seen in anything
Actors,
before.
you mean, not characters. You mean actors you haven't
Yeah.
seen. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Exactly.
gotcha.
Exactly.
The acting I thought was good, but there was no single moment that I'm sitting here talking about. So I mean,
I see, and I think there was. I think there was one moment personally.
there, like I said, everything was it did what it was supposed to do. That's
Fair enough.
all. That's all
Ironically, I didn't sympathize as much with who I would presume the lead characters were as much as the minor characters, because there is one girl in particular who has an affliction that develops over the course of the film. I felt the worst for her. I seriously did, you know, and my heart was kind of broken as I saw the
Shades of
progression.
the Ruins. In that particular.
I was
movie.
kind of hoping
good movie, by the way.
I was
great
kind
book,
of
too.
hoping something would. I don't want to give anything. I was hoping it would develop
Save
a
for
little
the
bit
spoilers.
different way, but with that role, but it was worth it.
It was
Well,
some of the only gore in the movie.
The bit of acting I was going to mention, Andrew, that I thought particularly stood out was something that I can dovetail into the cinematography, and that is the homage to the snot angle. Right, there was
this is what
a
you
direct
mentioned.
homage to what ended up being the most seen sort of snapshot from the Blair Witch Project. The I'm scared, I'm sorry, we're all
so
gonna die
sorry
here
right now.
with the snot bubble and everything. Everyone knows this shot.
Right.
Just the single and the girl at the corner, right, of the whole shot. They did the same thing towards the very end, but they did it with a purpose, and it was really successful in my opinion. It's like, oh, I see what you guys are doing. Like, it's that shot, but wow, this is a great way to present it.
Yeah.
Like, I really dug the hell out of that.
So was that where they were showing the dueling perspective?
It was towards the end when there was someone trying to be careful
yeah.
about something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just clarify.
Yes. I think that's a good way to, like I said, lead into the cinematography because I thought that was brilliant. There was a lot of quick cuts. If we're gonna briefly segue into editing, some of the cinematography gets lost because there's some interesting shots that get cut short.
Right.
But that's because we're going through all these different camera perspectives.
Yes,
you know?
exactly.
So you've got a drone, you've got all the on-ear cameras, you've got all that stuff going on.
And I like the drone edition, personally. Now, they only used it one particular way, which surprised me. I thought there might have been maybe a chase cam or something like that. We didn't really get that. But
both of the cameras they brought, the extra cameras, the utilization of them was this big.
Yeah.
Minuscule. Yeah.
But they were beautiful.
Yeah,
the drone
they were
shots.
nice. They were real nice.
Indeed, and it did really tie in with the story of giving that just vibe of being lost.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, absolutely.
The way that they employed the drone when they actually put it up later on in the film, and they're just like, we are somewhere else, like where time and space and everything is not flowing properly.
Yeah,
you
where
know?
things that were there are not there.
There was
Yeah.
so, I mean,
So
it's just
fascinating.
so interesting.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like the fact that we can say that, I think, is a big check mark in the positive column for this movie. So, so yeah, the cinematography was great. I thought, especially towards the end, again using the cameras to get quick glimpses of things that we didn't get to see in the first movie. Thank God.
The one thing I think they didn't do justice to was the house. I don't think they showed the house nearly enough.
It was a little.
But they-
It was only a couple of corridors. You're right. For as big as they made the house to
Did
be.
it
Oh,
feel
yeah,
like
but going up multiple
did they,
stairs.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Did it feel like they rebuilt some of the house? Like it was like
more to
old
it
and rotted
compared
away
to-
and stuff, and there was it was a full house.
Well,
It
in
was
the mythology.
labyrinthine.
There
Yeah.
was no, I mean, when they did the light scenes, there was no section of wall that was gone. In the first one, I just saw it. I know for a fact a portion of the whole top.
Okay,
portion of the
I
building
I
was
forgot
gone.
that. So from the cinematography, then let's just segue into the effects. There wasn't a whole lot, but the effects that we did get were very effective.
Right. Yeah.
As
Yeah,
Fuego
but don't-
alluded to, there was something with a particular character that she was dealing with.
It was one of the only moments that made me cringe.
Yeah, but
I
there
didn't
was
even
there,
jump
well, but
at the other
no,
stuff.
but there was one moment with that character earlier on that made everyone jump, where it was like, "Whoa, what was that?" Including another character in the movie. Yeah. So I don't know, man. The stuff that character went through was pretty rough.
I felt like it was worse than anybody else in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, seriously. I am reminded, though, of one cinematography thing that we obviously missed, and I felt like the forest looked very different I don't know if it's a different
It
season,
Think
or
so?
It
but
was
it looked
way
more
more dense.
Yes,
Way more
it
dense.
really did.
Really?
And that was
Okay.
one of the things that took me out.
Interesting.
As opposed to thinking it was the same forest.
Yeah.
It looked like they shot it. In a
That was
different
one
place.
one
I
of the
didn't
things
make that connection, but
there's-
okay.
the cons I had about this film, I can't really talk about because
Well, you're
there's
trying to
things-
ignore them.
No, I
should
can't. I don't
focus
want
on
to
They're
talk
the
about
spoilery.
it because they're spoilery.
Okay.
So,
Well, we'll hold off on
we'll
that.
get to those shortly then.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
but
So,
that was one of the things.
I'm
the
glad I
denser-
wasn't the only one that
denser
saw
forest,
that. Yeah,
yeah.
the forest looked like a totally different place to me.
Yeah.
So.
and bear in mind, there's not much music to speak of until you get to the end credits,
Mhm.
and then I noticed that it said music composed by Adam Wingard. So the music is sparse, but
Mhm.
that's okay. In this instance, I don't think we lost anything from
No,
that.
not as
I didn't
much,
even
so.
notice it
Yeah.
really.
All right. Well, is there anything final we can say in the non-spoiler section about Blair Witch 2016?
Watch it.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it's worth going to see. It'll keep you entertained for the duration.
I would say go early because the opening crowd camaraderie is
Mhm.
going to help with this one.
I think so too.
for sure.
And
So
also, you don't want stuff spoiled because there's.
that too.
Yeah, because it's gonna be really hard not to be spoiled.
Yeah, very true.
Mhm.
But if you do want to get spoiled,
Stay
stay
tuned.
tuned.
Yeah, yeah, right now. And as an ending thing, I like this better than Don't Breathe.
Oh,
Fair enough.
Wow.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
Okay.
I did.
That's good.
I
Discovery
really
was
enjoy.
really
You know
good.
what? I might have too. I really enjoyed this movie
Yeah.
a lot. There was a lot of really cool little details in this
Yeah.
that I'm forgetting right now. So,
Yeah.
all right. I think
Spoiler-
that's
spoiler.
spoilers are coming, guys. But for now, we'll close out the non-spoiler discussion of 2016's Blair Witch. So, thank you very much for watching. I've been Cecil Laird,
Gracias, I've been having fuego.
I'm Andrew Mercer.
No, March Parker.
and until next time, remember,
Stay
scared.
scared.